So you're in Chapala, you're looking at Airbnbs, you sign a lease. Let's get to it. All right, tell us your story.
The day that I found my long-term lease, I found the place and was on my way back to the Airbnb where I was currently staying, and I had a car accident.
Okay.
Yes. So the car accident itself was not that bad of an accident. I actually was stopped at the time, and a motorcycle T-boned me in my passenger door. And the driver was fine. But special thing about Mexico, there are not enforced laws around seatbelts and helmets. So his girlfriend, who was on the back of his motorcycle, flew off of the bike, hit her ankle on the back of my car, and her helmet that was on but not closed flew off of her head, and her head hit the pavement.
But she's okay.
She's just fine. Yes.
Okay. All right. So you get in the accident.
Yes.
The driver hits you. What is the first thing you do?
Get out of the car and go to the young woman on the ground. I didn't want to move her, but I pulled out my phone to start calling emergency services, and other people came around too. And she then started to stir, and her boyfriend came over and started to talk to her on the ground and see if she was okay. So for about probably 5 minutes, we were all trying to call emergency services, and somebody got the Red Cross, which is the ambulance service there in Chapala, on the way.
Okay. I feel like a lot of people in that situation would not have known how to call emergency services in another country. So is that something that you had looked up ahead of time?
So I wish that was something I looked up ahead of time. No. Actually, the number that I had in my phone, because it was provided in my Airbnb, an emergency, little index of numbers, but that number was not the right number. And I learned that depending on where you are, even in the same city or town, the emergency number might be different. So in some places, the number's like 066. Somewhere else, it might be 611. Somewhere else, it might be a 9-digit number.
Okay.
So I think that's why that took so long. But a local was the person who actually made the right phone call.
Okay, that's good to know. So emergency services, first people on the scene are the Red Cross. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's you, the driver, the motorcycle driver, his girlfriend, and strangers around.
Yes.
Okay.
The ambulance shows up, and then the police arrived.
Okay. Did someone also call the police, or did the ambulance call the police? How did the police get there?
I don't actually know. I feel like somebody took care of that because there were so many people calling.
Okay.
But I was talking to the driver and his girlfriend because she was trying to get up and say that she was okay, and he was telling her, no, you need to lay down. And so we were just trying to keep her still until they arrived. And by the time the ambulance got there, the police were pulling up.
Okay. How did you feel when you saw the police pull up?
How did I feel? I don't know. I wasn't. All I can associate with police presence is fear and anxiety based on my experience in America. And I didn't feel that. I guess I was glad they were there because, okay, great, somebody's going to help. That's what I associate the police in Mexico with, is helping.
Okay, that's good to know. Police show up. Ambulance is there. They take her away in the ambulance. They take her to a hospital?
Not immediately. She was still there on the scene for a long time. And I would say it probably took 30 minutes to an hour for them to actually take her.
Okay.
We were on the scene of the accident for a long time.
What's a long time? Is that
5 hours?
5 hours?
A long time because, that's what I started doing, was calling my insurance.
Okay.
Which was also a hot mess. So for those who are driving in Mexico, definitely know you have to have Mexican insurance, not U.S. insurance, because it will not cover you. But
Y'all heard
also,
that, right? Y'all heard that. Get you some Mexican insurance.
yes, yes,
So you were like, I know how the story ends, but if
yes.
Dani did not have Mexican insurance, Dani would have been in it. Like more like even when the police came, the immigration thing wasn't the issue. It was like
No.
the accident and
Insurance.
how you deal with the accident is the issue. So did the police officers ask you for your insurance?
Yeah, that was probably the first thing that they asked me.
Okay.
Once they figured out that I only spoke English, do I have insurance? Yeah, and we were going through a little debacle getting them on the phone because when I called them, sometimes my phone was not able to get through, but
Mm-hmm.
then someone else called from their local phone and got through. They only spoke Spanish. So when I requested, like someone else translated and requested that they call me back with someone who spoke English, and they couldn't call me back because my phone number was an American phone number and they can only dial out Mexican phone numbers. So they wouldn't call back in English. So I had a translated conversation with my insurance company through a stranger.
On someone else's phone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So look for insurance that has English agents. I looked for it, and even the insurance that I purchased said that they had service in English. It also said that it provided me with a guaranteed bail, which we'll get to that later. But there were several things that I was shown in my insurance package that did not play out.
And how did you research the insurance before you got down there?
So I looked into, actually, I think I was with Allstate at that time, and they recommend some providers for people who need Mexican insurance. And I started there and compared prices and the packages.
Okay.
And the insurance is not very expensive. So getting the top tier package was still really affordable.
Okay.
So I would say for English agents for sure, but even still anticipate that might not happen.
Yeah. Joan, who lives, I don't know where Joan lives now. Joan be traveling. I don't know. Joan, who has spent some time in Chapala, says, yes, you need Mexican insurance and a contact in the area to help you. So you definitely need that. Okay. So they come, they ask for the insurance. What happens next?
So after we eventually communicate with the insurance company, the agent, or they dispatch an adjuster to the scene. But he was coming from Guadalajara.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it was like traffic hour was probably like close to 3 or 4 p.m. at that time. So that took at least 90 minutes for him to actually get the message and then get on his way, plus the time he had to spend driving from Guadalajara to Chapala.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what took so long.
So, and I learned this from Michelle, who is in San Miguel de Allende, and I have from Afro Expats, I have a video with her, and I think we talked about it on the video. But if you get in a car accident in Mexico, you have to stay for your insurance company to arrive. It's not like you can like leave and be insured, like someone's taking photo, like you take photo, like in the US, you know, the police come, they do a report, and then you can go and your insurance company will just take the information. You have to stay until the insurance company shows up, however long that takes, right?
Yes. And yeah, that process is backwards in Mexico because the insurance adjuster is really the one who holds the authority to write the report. The police are just there to keep you there. We're just there to keep you there because the guy on the motorcycle ended up being really nice, and we talked a lot because we were together for a while. But he explained that when people get in accidents in Mexico, they probably will just drive off. Like they tend to flee the scene because it's a crime in Mexico to have an accident. So I was like, wait, so you expected me to just drive off? Like, that's why the police are here, because they just keep those involved in the accident present, make some observations to turn over to the insurance agent.
Yeah, Joan was saying she got in a car accident. First thing he did was call a local attorney. So things to keep in mind if you're driving down here. I tell people all the time, if you don't need to drive in foreign countries, like don't just be driving just to drive. Like you drove down here and you had your dog and there were good reasons for you to drive. But like people ask me all the time, like, why don't you drive in Mexico City? And I'm like, chaos and not like it's hard. It can be very hard to go to another country and know all of the things that learn all of the things that you need to know. And so you learn some things on the spot. So police came, other driver's still there. They take off the passenger to the hospital in a little while. And the insurance adjuster is coming. What happens next?
So for a long time, everybody was just chilling. It was very casual. Because I think once the young lady on the motorcycle woke up and was talking, it was like trying to avoid going to the hospital. Everybody relaxed. It was just a matter of waiting around. So I was like in my car for a bit on the phone. I had time to like reach out to a family member and a friend to let them know what happened and just say, I'll keep you posted. I don't really know what's going to happen. And when the insurance adjuster finally made the decision and coordinated with medical services that she was going to go and get treatment, that is when the decision was actually made that me and the other driver had to go to jail.
I know. I want to back up a second. The insurance adjuster decided that she got to go to the hospital?
So I learned that money is the king in Mexico, because this all came down to whether or not he believed that my insurance policy would cover the damages and medical. Also, so the officer who arrived on the scene, he started asking me about like what happened. He did ask me and both the other driver what happened. And when I told him where the other driver was, he was on a motorcycle. I told him he was driving outside the lane of traffic. And he was like, oh, well, that's an emergency lane. Nobody's supposed to be driving there. That's for you to pull over if you have an emergency. And then he goes and checks and says there are skid marks there in the emergency lane that prove what you're saying. He should not have been driving there. That was the last we talked about that.
Okay. So the police have decided that the other guy was at fault.
That's what the police told me long before the insurance agent came.
Okay.
The thing that was never said.
I'm sorry?
The thing that was never said was that the other driver did not have insurance. He was a local citizen. The other driver did not have insurance. And the neatest way to clean it up was to charge my insurance because I had it.
Okay. So your insurance agreed to cover it, even though by the looks of things, you were not at fault. Yay, because she gets medical care, right? Like, okay, you already paid for your insurance, and your insurance rates weren't going to change. Do you know? Did they ever talk about that?
Okay, no, so because I had a liability only policy. My car was a salvage title, so they didn't have to cover that at all.
Okay, so you weren't at fault, technically, right? You weren't at fault. Your insurance wasn't going up. The insurance paid for her to go to the hospital, or decided that she could go to the hospital.
Yes.
Whatever. And then you were arrested.
So that's when I found out that technically I had been under arrest since the accident happened.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Wait.
Both me and the other driver.
Okay.
And they told me when they documented it, they put down like the time that they detained me as the initial time when they showed up at the accident.
Okay. So why jail? Why did you get arrested?
So if you're going to drive in Mexico, you should know that it is the law that if you have an accident in Mexico and there are significant property or medical damages, both drivers are held for 48 hours until insurance is verified and whatever expenses are squared away.
Okay, so this is what I find. This is what had me tripped up a minute ago. Like, you've told me this before. We've talked through this, so I know this part of the story. But what just occurred to me is if your insurance company was like, nah, we're not paying for this, would you have still been arrested? If she didn't go to the hospital, would you have still been arrested? Do you know?
That's a
Or
great question. So it sounded like, and the officers told me so many different things. It was very hard to get a clear what's going on. But it sounded like if medical expenses were not a factor, and maybe me and the driver made the agreement to pay to figure out how we're going to pay for damages between us, then it was no problem.
Okay. So if you if your insurance company did the good thing, right? The generous thing of paying for the uninsured driver's hospital. But that also may have been why you spent 2 days in jail.
Yes, because the accident became expensive.
That's wild. Like literally.
Yep, it all came down to money. It all came down to money. And the officers told me that, like, this is really just about making sure that damages are paid because there are a lot of drivers in Mexico without insurance. And if her medical expenses are more than you can agree to pay within a certain amount of time, then you're held for additional time in jail to serve, yes, to pay off that sentence.
Okay, Shadi. All right. Let's back it up a second. All right. So, what is the realization? I love us.
Yes, seriously. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about that. I was like, I know there's some Black women somewhere. Can someone please
Whoa, dropped off a lot of food at the Chapala jail. All right. So when was the realization that like this wasn't going to end as an accident in America would end? That even though it wasn't your fault, you weren't doing anything wrong, you weren't drunk, you didn't hit anybody, this is becoming a bigger thing. What did that realization look like?
Yeah, it escalated really quickly after we had been on the scene for a long time. And I feel like the officers were just keeping me calm and stringing me along. Like, oh, yeah, we're just waiting for the adjuster to come. We're going to wrap it up. But then all of a sudden, once they had their conversation about money, then it was like, okay, well, we have to tow your car. We have to tow his car. Even though his bike, both vehicles were still operational. And I was like, can I not just go park my car? My Airbnb is right there. They said, nope, now we have to follow this process. They kept talking to me about a process. We have to seize the vehicles in case they have to be used for collateral to pay for the medical damages. And until we know how much the medical damages will be, we don't know when we can release the property or if the insurance company will cover it. So that's what the 48-hour hold is for, to determine all those things.
Okay. So the insurance adjuster, police, they chitter chat. The police come back to you and are like, hey sis, we're taking you to jail. Like what happened?
So I will say the chief of police in Chapala was really kind, and he speaks English very well. So we were able to like develop rapport. And he's like, I know this is just an accident. This wasn't even your fault. I know you're just here to, vacation, but this is the law. The insurance adjuster says we have to take you to jail.
Wait, your insurance adjuster?
This is what the officer said to me. Yes, the insurance adjuster says that we have to we have to initiate this 48-hour hold to verify what damages are going to be before he says for sure, yes, her policy will cover the cost of this accident. And for the record, the damages or the medical expenses ended up being far less than what my policy covers. So there was a lot of cushion there. Like, I think he had the jurisdiction to say, yes, the policy will cover it. Just send them home.
Okay, but he didn't.
Right.
Okay, insurance adjuster man, we see you. We see you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so handcuffs. What's up? Let's talk about it.
So they didn't I got preferential treatment, I think, because the officer did not put me in handcuffs for quite some time. Actually, the first thing we did was I told him, like, look, if you're going to take my car, can I please get all of my stuff out of it? Because I had my luggages that I were not actively using in my daily life and my Airbnb were in my trunk. So he let me empty my trunk, put it in his police trunk, drove it to my Airbnb, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna let you go inside and put your stuff down. And I also had my dog, so I said, okay, I'm gonna put some food and water out. He said, go ahead, go and get what you need. But if you decide not to come out, I have to call the SWAT team. So please don't do that. Please just go and come back out. I said, okay, I'm chilling. I'm cooperating.